at the NeMa conference in Athens, and I'm today with Phil Brown, who's a member of the executive board of Clearstream. And I'm going to focus on the subject that he's going to talk about tomorrow. Now, tomorrow he's going to talk about the future for the industry as a whole. Specifically, though, what I'd like to ask you, Phil, is from a Clearstream perspective, what do you see as your greatest opportunity and what do you see as your greatest threat in the future?
Well, one of the things I'm going to talk about tomorrow is that our greatest threat, not just for Clearstream but as an industry, is probably the things that we don't know and haven't seen coming. So I'm going to spend a lot of my time talking about disruption, and I pick up 4 themes, one of which I'll talk about in terms of our opportunity. In fact, all of them can be flipped into opportunities. So I talk about T2S as a disruptor, something that's already happening, but then I go on to talk about compliance, and one of the great threats to our industry is the change in the compliance environment, particularly the challenge to the omnibus account and some of the things we need to do as an industry in order to make sure that the efficiencies that come from that structure can be maintained in the light of the new compliance environment. And then I'm going to go on to talk about fintech and blockchain. And then when I talk about the unknown, that's really the things that concern me. Is the theory of Bitcoin and blockchain and distributed ledger is such that in many ways you could argue that there is no need for us as intermediaries to exist in a future that relies upon that kind of technology. So that's one of the things I see as an unknown, really unknown in its quantity, threat to our business. In terms of opportunity, I think that also we can turn these threats into opportunities, because I think that one of the things that we've been really good at, and T2S is a great example of this, is when we have a significant change to the way we work, we've been quite innovative as an industry in figuring out what our new roles are. And I do think that there's a lot to be said for the trust in our organizations, the brand that we have, and the way that clients will still feel the need, with their trillions invested in markets around the world, to work with professional organizations that they can rely upon. So I think that our great opportunity could be the flip of our threat. Now, down at the product level, John, I think that the market's quite stable at the moment. You know, we're still living through an environment of very low interest rates, of low volatility, and that's really taken out a lot of the margin from our business. But in terms of stability, the industry's still quite stable in terms of its revenue streams. We still feel really good about collateral management and what's going to happen with the use of collateral in the future because of regulation. And I think that we still view that as a significant opportunity for us, as we've been significant investors in that space.
I mean, just focusing on those opportunities, I mean, in collateral management, can you give an idea of where you see it as a product in 3 or 4 years' time, and what value that really brings to the client?
Well, in one way I see collateral as a new asset class. So although we think about asset classes in terms of cash, equities, fixed income and derivatives, the way that banks treating collateral now with, if you like, collateral czars within their organizations who are controlling the collateral at the level of a firm, it's now really emerging as a new asset to be managed within a bank. So I think that when we think about our world of securities, we think in terms of the vertical slices of equities and fixed income. Collateral is actually more of a horizontal slice, and it's a different way of viewing the assets that a firm has. And then the way you bundle that collateral and package it in a way that you can then deploy it against a number of exposures you might have is going to be the critical factor. So I think that the reason we feel so good about it is that there aren't many organizations around the world who have the technology or the capability to do this, and we're one of the few that's invested over a 20-25 year period into this. So that's why we feel that it's a huge opportunity for us. What I would say is today the market is slow, and the market is slow because we're living in an unusual period. Interest rates are 0 to negative, and in that environment cash is a very attractive collateral class. When interest rates come back, we're going to see cash being much less attractive as a collateral class, and the kind of things that we do as an industry in mobilizing securities will become much more important.
I mean, as far as collateral goes, I mean, obviously you've created links, and you'll create more links, I'm sure, to expand the available pool of collateral. But in your mind, do you and similar organizations such as yourselves, with the few people who are actually really in the collateral space, they're very few, they're the big players with the big pools of collateral, is there enough collateral?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly the studies that I've seen suggest that there is enough collateral. The biggest challenge, and this isn't a new story, the biggest challenge is getting it from where it is, either from the organization that holds it or from the market where it's held, to where it needs to be. So the aggregate view is a reasonable view. When you boil it down to the micro level, at the level of an individual mutual fund or an individual bank, then that's where you need some smart alignment and smart mobilization capability. And that's still really in development from an industrial point of view. Many markets around the world have linked up, but there's many more to link up before we can close that gap.
I mean, and do you expect, I mean, again, we're talking about the virtual age, we're talking about the potential to disintermediate people in the chain, but the reality is that there is a lack of connectivity still across the world. Do you see a growing connectivity with the major sources of value?
I do, and I see that the solution is not a simple one, and the reason I say that is that post 2008, a lot of regulators in domestic markets do not like the idea of fully centralized, for example, collateral. They like to see that they can control their own market, and they can make sure that the banks in their home market and the CCPs and the other places where collateral gets lodged are secure on a domestic basis. So the key is really going to be to make that connectivity work on a cross-border basis while respecting the domestic requirements of the regulators and the domestic requirements of the banks in those local markets. So that creating one single central hub for collateral will not pass the regulatory smell test, in my opinion. You have to find a way to link together different pools of collateral in such a way that you can, as I say, satisfy those local regulators, but also satisfy the global mobilization requirements of the client.
Phil Brown, thank you very much indeed for that comment.
It's my pleasure.